What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a little bit of news about Owlcat Games, specifically in regards to their announcement a couple of days ago talking about how they became a publisher, and that they are publishing two upcoming games. One of them is a narrative adventure by the name of Rue Valley, and the other being a tactical isometric game called Shadow of the Road. Both of which we'll of course be discussing here, but first a little bit about Owlcat's big move here. So obviously going from just making games to publishing them is a pretty big step, and they've already clarified that they will of course continue developing games on their own as well. This is just something they also want to pursue in order to help more games get made naturally. Though I do have a couple of sort of general questions myself that I don't have the answer to or I haven't seen anywhere. For starters, I did a video not that long ago talking about what was next for Owlcat Games, and they themselves said that they had several games in development at the moment. And I haven't actually seen them say anywhere whether or not these two games were included in that number. Generally, I would say probably not, because they are of course just publishing these as opposed to developing them, but it isn't a question that I saw answered, and I'm a little curious myself. Though again, I would assume not. Otherwise, though, it's kind of just nice to see a studio that has a bunch of work I enjoy also trying to help other studios make things as well. So from there, let's actually talk about these two new games. First and foremost, it was mentioned that both of these are in fairly early stages of development, so it'll be some time before they get released. Though they will have more information to share on them later this month, which I would have to assume probably means Gamescom since that's going on. But who knows? Now let's start with the one that we have, I would say, more information about, which is Rue Valley. Rue Valley is a narrative game, specifically revolving around a 47-minute time loop. As a narrative game, though, this one is going to be all about its story, that story involving getting to the bottom of what this time loop is and why it's happening. But we do have a little more information than that thanks to a demo that was played by a PC Gamer, apparently, that they then did an article about, and they talked about how the time loop here ends with some sort of anomaly destroying the world before it resets, and your character has to deal with their own struggles while also trying to figure out what's going on. With the first thing they have to do is realize they are in a time loop, and then they can start setting intentions, which act as like quests for each round through, basically, as you seek to understand what is happening here. Though they did also point out an interesting thing in that article to me, which is that this time loop and that sort of 47-minute time frame seems to play around with the idea of save scumming being unnecessary because you'll simply get to try again every 47 minutes with things like different traits and whatnot appearing as you go in classic time loop fashion. Overall, I would say this is pretty interesting. I enjoy a good narrative game, and as always, these games hinge entirely upon that story and how interesting it winds up being. Though speaking of interesting ideas, we then have the other title, Shadow of the Road. Shadow of the Road is going to be set in an alternative Japan, specifically during the end of their feudal era, but also melded with magic and steampunk machinery. It's going to be a turn-based title, though they specifically call it a turn-based isometric RPG as opposed to just a CRPG like even Owlcat themselves, which makes me wonder if they are not trying to specifically avoid that label. But otherwise, information's a little bit sparse on this one. On their Steam page, they make references to, of course, choosing different options for your character, but in any event, there is a war going on between the Emperor and the Shogunate, which involves both yokai and magic, often present in, I would say, Japanese folklore type stuff, but then also they're going to be bringing in a British mercenary company operating all of this steampunk machinery. And it's going to be up to you how to deal with these situations, and apparently there's going to be choices to be made that determine how the story plays out, alongside a team of characters, each with their own story and skills. Now, from some screenshots they've dropped, we can make a few inferences. Obviously turn-based, as I mentioned, and it looks to be a movement point and action point based turn system. And outside of turn-based combat, we can, through a few different like GIFs and stuff they've shown, seen our characters moving around even in stealth or just exploring the environment. So I'm a little curious to see what this one winds up being, but obviously we're still lacking some critical information there. Either way though, I would say both of these titles look pretty promising, but as was mentioned, I don't think they're going to be releasing anytime soon, so we'll simply have to wait and see. But if you're interested in either of these, of course, stick around, as I will naturally be keeping an eye on these as more information becomes available. which of course means to like, comment, and subscribe. But regardless of any of that, truly just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.